بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم فقد قال تبارك وتعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل القائم على حدود الله والواقع فيها كمثل قوم استهموا على سفينة إلى آخر الحديث كما رواه إمام مسلم رحمه الله تعالى صدق الله وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ما قال ربنا وخالقنا لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين أما بعد. Respected elders, friends, it's an honor to be here in Masjid Ibrahim today. And before we get on to the topic and the introduction of the topic, a heartfelt thanks to Hazrat Maulana Saheb, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb for organizing or helping to organize this event. Hazrat Maulana Sayyid Ahmad Khan Saheb is one of the elders of the Tabligh, and he mentioned something in this book over here, in this work, सबसे ज़्यादा ख़तरा, the biggest danger, बयान करने वालों पर है. So the ones that are sitting in my position with the mic in front of us, we're in the biggest danger. So I was thinking about what Hazrat Maulana had said, and I just wanted to start off making dua that Allah Pak accepts whatever small efforts I have to present for a difficult topic, especially in the current climate, and then Allah Pak enables me to get to what my intentions were, inshallah. And by extension, Allah Pak gives me the ability to act upon my own advice and then by everybody else here. So this presentation entitled Reintroducing the Work of Tabligh, deliberately reintroducing because hum to bhai bade chote aadmi hain. I mean, who are we to present such an amazing work and even think that we can somehow present it in front of you in a way which it deserves to be presented. Hence, with the word reintroducing, not introducing, because it's already there. For those that are well versed, they'll understand it much better than others. And again, to quote Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb, who will mention for the brothers that are not well versed who he was, Rahmatullah alayhi, the founder of Tablighi Jamat, he mentions that we've not even had the ability to present more than 1,000th of this work. And out of the 1,000th that we presented, we've not able to act upon even everything in that 1,000. So I, first of all, again, after thanking the Jamiat, thank you guys, mashallah. Many of you are already involved in the work. Many of you have been in the work for a long time. Some of you are new. But you all turned up to learn something. Aur ye jo niyat hai, inshallah, that's where we start. Allah Pak isko mubarak kare. Honestly, it's an honor. You must have done something that Allah Pak gave you the ability to leave your TV screens and everything else and come and sit here. So with that done, let's move further into this topic. Why did we select this topic? I delivered this presentation a few weeks ago, believe it or not, in Atlanta, out of all places in the US, on the way back from Panama. Panama, as you know, is a country, it's the isthmus between North and South America. So we were there for the first graduation of ulama, scholars, for a madrasa that was built a long time ago. And this was the first time that at least according to our knowledge, that the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, was being completed. So now, alhamdulillah, Latin America has, mashallah, Spanish-speaking homegrown ulama. That madrasa was found by the late Hazrat Hafiz Patel Saheb, rahmatullah alayhi. It would be completely unfair of me to do a bayan on this topic without thanking the efforts of Hazrat Hafiz Saheb. And our elders were ajib, their concept of ikhlas and sincerity was such that even after they pass away, we continue to see the fruits of their labor. Such was this madrasa. So after this bayan, some satis, they thought it was, well, at least one, they thought it was beneficial. So that's the reason. And I'll come back to Panama and Hazrat Hafiz Saheb, rahmatullah alayhi, during the presentation. And as it was explained on the poster, my aim is, inshallah, just to try and reinvigorate, not invent, but just reintroduce the value of this work. Perhaps we hear X, we have some misconceptions about the work in general. Where does it come from? What does it mean? And occasionally there's barriers to get involved in the work. And finally, where appropriate, I might do some indications towards some pitfalls for the brothers that are already involved in the work. But inshallah, we hope that Allah Pak accept this, as I've mentioned. Again, I'm not worthy of speaking about the Tablighi Jamat. I'm a half-baked human being. Forget being a fully baked Tablighi. But honestly, when I picked up the books and started reading about the elders of the Tabligh over the last few years, and you just feel embarrassed. Sharam aati hai. The amount of, as you'll see inshallah today, one feels very small when he reads about the accomplishments of the scholars of the past. But at the end of the day, we have what we have. We'd like to be better people, but we have to do, and Allah Pak's given us this opportunity, or me this opportunity, that I just wanted to reintroduce, as I said, these values. And those that are already in, the work of Tablighi Jamat, which I'm going to now refer to as the Tahriq of Iman, and I'll explain why, the movement of Iman, is amazing. You travel the world. Allah Pak's blessed me over the past few years. Amazing places the word of Allah and His Rasul has reached. If not hundreds of millions, and it's not even countable. There's some things in life, we get impressed by numbers. Reality is we cannot even count the amount of barakah and blessing that this work has gone into. And the reason why I said I'm going to try and refer to the Tablighi Jamat is the tahriq, or the movement of Iman, because Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb, he himself was not entirely happy with it being referred to as a jama'ah. This is not something that's a sect. This is something that is born about principles of the Sharia, and it's there just to reinvigorate simple things, 6 simple things which we'll discuss, starting with this power of Iman, this belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that has been there since the beginning of the time, since the time of Ab sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Sahaba. And sometimes we reduce Tabligh just for the dawah aspect. Why? Because we perhaps see certain people knocking on our door. We see them walking on the street. But as hopefully Allah Pak gives me the ability, you'll see that when we look at the other values, okay, that is why when we say 6 points, it's probably better we say 6 qualities. Because when we look at 6 points, we just think, it's not that important. When we say 6 qualities, ye sifat hai. This is not something that Tablighis need. This is something that every human being with Iman needs. And our Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Mutala Saheb, rahmatullah alayhi, he would just say to us, he goes, look, there's lots of elders in the Ummah. There's plenty of special people that you can read about. But certainly for the ones that have directly affected our lives, he goes, bas sirf ek ko hi le lo. He said, just read about one. You don't need to read 100 biographies, 200, it's good if you do, but just read one. And if I can somehow present that today, or even small aspects of that, then inshallah, hopefully I've got to my point. So as I was saying, coming back to these 6 points that we should really refer to as 6 qualities. Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi Khan Dehlwi, he was from a very special background, and we'll touch upon his father during a couple of these points. He was born in 1885 and he passed away in 1944. Just to contextualize, in case you're thinking of I'm talking somebody, the Queen was 18 years old when he passed away. The Queen, the one that you guys will go to bury tomorrow, she was 18. So it's very close to our time, okay? They were both alive at the same time. Let's move on to these 6 points, okay? These 6 characteristics, these 6 qualities. Number 1, ikhlas. I'm doing this in a different order because my intentions are slightly different to when other brothers might do it. But I think it's important because your intention before starting something in the name of Allah, during something in the name of Allah, and finishing something needs to be checked at every point. Tabligh, as again Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb would say himself, he would get upset that people are coming to see me, as in me the individual. He goes, Tabligh is not about me. Tabligh is the inheritance of the prophets. It's very important to remember this point, because any work which seems to gather a bit of fame, very quickly it can become about asbab, about individuals. Tabligh is not Hazrat Maulana Umar Palampuri, Tabligh is not Maulana Tariq Jamil Saheb. These are part of the work, but it doesn't mean it's not about personalities, okay? It's the work of Allah and His Rasul, and it's very important to understand that word. Why? And the reason why Maulana Ilyas Saheb Rahmatullahi would say this was his ikhlas speaking. Ibn Mas'ud, the famous Sahaba, the famous Sahabi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he would describe a mukhlis, somebody who's sincere. He would say, Al-mukhlis li rabbihi kalmashi ala ramal. That the sincere person is like somebody who's walking on the beach. Do you ever hear the noise of anybody walking along the beach? Farooq bhai, आवाज आती है? No. Even somebody that's possibly a wee bit overweight like me, मेरी आवाज भी शायद ना आती हो. But what do you notice afterwards? لا تسمعوا خطواته ولكن ترى آثاره. You can always notice the prints. See? You know, in the world, in matters of dunya, you know, from business, it's all about marketing. It's about making the biggest noise, being on the best of places to be seen, just to push your name in front of people. But in matters of deen, ikhlas is something very, very different. It's sometimes about doing the work, but trying to remain as quiet as possible. Why? Because those footprints, you know, if God forbid, there was a volcano erupted or something, there's a chance that through your ikhlas, they will remain for centuries. And that's an important point to remember, because again, I quote Hazrat Maulana Sayyid Ahmad Khan Sahib, mentioning from his elders like Maulana Ilyas Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi, he says, I really fear two things for people that want to get in this work. One is that काम नहीं हो रहा, लेकिन सोच रहे हैं कि काम हो रहा है. They're doing the work, and they feel as though that something's happening, but in reality nothing is. And that he's trying to remind us of the fact that these 6 characteristics are not only to listen to in a bayan, but they're about acting upon, which I'll discuss in a second. But the second thing is here, कि आपकी निगाहें जब asbab ho, that when you have abilities, your mindset changes from Allah's helping us when we have nothing, to, the work is great because of X amount of money, or because we have this person on board. This was something that the elders spoke about, okay? And the reason why I mentioned at the beginning, intention at the beginning and the end, if you are part of a masjid committee, for instance, everybody inshallah comes in with the best of intentions, but the day you fall out with somebody, the day somebody disagrees with you, the day somebody tells you off, that's when your intention will be tested. Okay? Sufyan al-Thawri, again, these were tabi'een, students of the Sahaba, rahimahullah, he would say, مَا أَلِجْتُ شَيْئًا أَشَدُّ عَلَيَّ مِن نِيَّتِي لِأَنَّهَا تَتَقَلَّبْ. That I've never, and these were people that knew hundreds and thousands of ahadith, but what's he saying? He goes, I've never dealt with something more difficult in my life than intention. Why? لِأَنَّهَا تَتَقَلَّبْ. Because it changes in a split second, okay? You can grow from doing the work of Allah to something else where, you know, I'm still doing the work of Allah, but, you know, let me just block this person. Let me just keep this person out. Your intention is no longer about trying to do the work. It's about trying to keep other people's away. Or, you know what, let me support this person because it endorses my objective. Okay? So Allah Pak give us all ikhlas, okay? And very quickly, just to finish this point, I will move swiftly. You maybe seen the message today about Hazrat Maulana Rafi Usmani Saheb. Aapne message dekha hoga, Hazrat. Hazrat Maulana Rafi Usmani Saheb, Damat Barakatuhu, is the Grand Mufti of Pakistan. He's the elder brother of Mufti Taqi Usmani Saheb. He's ill right now. Allah Pak unko shifa ajila kamila de. The reason why I'm mentioning Hazrat Mufti Saheb is when I had the chance to spend some time with him, Hazrat mentioned some amazing story about Maulana Ilyas Saheb Rahmatullah Alayhi when he came to visit Maulana Rafi's father, Mufti Shafi Usmani Saheb, the Mufti of Pakistan, Rahmatullah Alayhi. He said that Maulana Ilyas Saheb, you know, when Tabligh was going great, thousands of people were flocking in. He goes, he came to meet Mufti Shafi Saheb, ro rahe hain. He's crying. You know what, business is good when the pounds are rolling in or the masjid's full. So when you're in a situation where things are going well, that's when your ego will step in. You know what, mashallah, look at all the effort we put in. And then you start perhaps developing a bit of arrogance and you think because it is your ability. But the Akabir, including Maulana Ilyas Saheb, Hazrat Ji Rahmatullah, when they're like this, he's crying, roaring. And he's crying and saying to Mufti Shafi Saheb that I'm worried that this is just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doing istidraj. Istidraj is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't care about you and lets you have the best in the world. And he's constantly questioning himself. And Hazrat Mufti Rafi Saheb mentioned that Mufti Shafi Saheb, his father, he consoled him and he said to him, and this is why it's important always to do ruju with elders, mashayikh and ulama. He says it's not istidraj, you're doing the work of Allah. Maybe I feel it's a sign of acceptance. And the reason why I can say this is because those people who are having success in this life and they're under this category of istidraj, of just being let loose, do what you want, they would never even have the tawfiq of realizing that that's what's happening. Because you realize that's what's happening, inshallah, your work will be accepted. So, ikhlas, done, okay? That was one of the 6 characteristics, inshallah. Moving on. Again, I put this in an order because I'm trying to follow the life of Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb, rahmatullah alayhi. So, apologies if anything in that. So, we want to acknowledge one of these 6 sifat, qualities that we all need, is knowledge, sacred knowledge. These 6 points, 6 characteristics, they're not just something that one man woke up in the morning and just wrote down on a piece of paper. It's, to use a biochemistry term, it's a distillation of the Quran and Sunnah. It's essentially looking at the whole of the Quran and Sunnah and thinking, you know what 6 things do we need and that will do us, inshallah, to such a degree that will give us the results we're looking for. And again, the kitabs mention the bayan of Hazrat Maulana Ubaidullah Balyawi rahmatullah alayhi, that at the beginning there was actually more than 6 numbers. Interestingly, one was Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb, one of his points were that the people of the time, they're doing the work of Tabligh, one of the points was you've not to wear the clothes of some other sect that existed, man tashabbaha biqawm, because a lot of the people at the time were wearing inappropriate dress. It's not part of the 6 numbers today, it doesn't need to be, okay? But I'm mentioning that because sometimes we treat this lightly. We think, we'll do what we want. There's no harm in having big events on certain names. I'm trying to be very careful because I don't want to say anything controversial. But if you are doing something that resembles a certain people, even if it no longer carries those connotations, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's still right to do. Okay? Very fine point. Inshallah, Hazrat Badme if they want tafsil. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is that Maulana Ubaidullah Saheb rahmatullah, he mentions there was up to 60 points. And Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb Bani Tabligh rahmatullah alayhi, he would flick through the Quran from start to finish. He would open the tafsirs from start to finish. Hazrat Maulana Ubaidullah Saheb mentions himself that when it came to the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, which is known as the most asahul kutub ba'da kitabillah, the most authentic book after the Quran Kareem, he goes that Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb's ubur and his command of the book was such that so many usul of tabligh were built upon the chapters within Sahih Bukhari. This is not something that's magically something new, something that doesn't have any foundations in the Quran and the Sunnah. And again, referring to their ta'alluq with the Quran, the family of Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, they would have in Kandala, which is a village in India, they would have a masjid where the family would pray at. They would read Salah. And it's mentioned that the full front row of Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb's family masjid and half of the second row was filled with hufaz from the same family. Such was this connection with the Quran and the Sunnah, okay? And again, because ek do ulama bhi baithe hain, very quick point. You know, when ulama graduate, they study the 6 famous kitabs, Imam Bukhari's Sahih, Imam Muslim, Abu Dawud Sharif, Nasai, Ibn Majah, Muwatta, Tirmizi. Some study more than 6. Now, Maulana Ilyas Saheb's knowledge was such that he would actually give dars of the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim. Now, any alim today, if you decide to put this book of hadith in front of him, they would probably struggle to give dars from this kitab. You know, these publishers, Allah Pak give them Jazai Khair. So I was discussing with my friends, because there's some, mashallah, ulama that I know that have started to look at these books, which Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb looked at without even probably electricity. You know, Darul Ta'sil, Darul Maiman, Darul Risala, these are all publishers. I was saying to them, how did Hazrat Ji even attempt this? You know, in order for you to attempt this, you have to have such a well-grounded base in ilm that only people that have genuinely been given help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could do this. But how did he get to that level? And now I'm talking to the young people, okay? Or when I say young, I'm talking to myself, possibly. What was Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb's effort like as childhood? Because nothing like this comes overnight. Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, he was what one may say an ill student. Bimar bahut hote the. Okay? Again, this was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So often when it came to his studies, they'd be affected. Start, stop, start, stop. And again, it's the bayan of multiple scholars that it even came to a point where the doctor that was treating Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, the son of Hazrat Gangohi, Hakim Masood Ahmad alayhi rahmah, he said to him, he goes that, I think your illness is related to the type of water you're taking. And the books mention that for 7 years, during his childhood, for 7 years, he wasn't able to even drink water properly. Perhaps there was other sources of nourishment, milk, etc. But I'm saying this to you because, and I'm coming to the point, you know, when we come to study deen, put up with a little bit of difficulty. You know, if the place of worship doesn't have the best of facilities, you know, the water is not the right temperature, the fan is not working, okay? Just remember that these mushaqqati, these difficulties, if you get through them, will be a blessing for you. All right? I mean, I'm not talking about from an organizer's point of view. It could be bishi from an organizational point. You try your best, like these guys have done, mashallah. But from a learner's point of view, you should be willing to overcome any barrier and any obstacle to learn the sacred sciences of deen. Okay? It's a quality that we need to have. Why? Because there's a famous Arabic saying, and it's quoted in all halaqas of ilm, ki al-ilm shay la yu'tika ba'dahu hatta tu'tiyahu kullak. That, you know, knowledge is a weird thing. Sacred knowledge of Quran and Hadith, it's a bit stingy. It won't even give you a little part of it until you give it absolutely everything, okay? And again, just a small reminder to people that are already involved in the work, don't underestimate these years of Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi before Tabligh began, his childhood, the time that he spent as learning the deen in Saharanpur, the time he spent as a teacher in Mazahiri Ulum, the time he spent in Delhi running his father's madrasa, his elder brother's madrasa in Basti Nizamuddin. This was even before Tabligh kicked off. Don't underestimate these years. Why? Because in the words of Hazrat Maulana Abdul Qadir Raipuri rahmatullah alayhi, whom Maulana Ilyas Saheb would go to visit his place after doing the work of Tabligh. He had so much respect for him. He said that Jo kuch Tabligh ko baad mein mila, that whatever Tabligh inherited from the hundreds and millions of people that it affected afterwards, this was due to the effort of Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb before the time of Tabligh. Okay? So moving just with that point straight on, advice I've mentioned for all our students, including myself, you know, if the facilities are not the best, don't worry. If you can put some money in, inshallah, to help the masjid. There's one thing whinging about something. There's another thing going up to say, Basharat bhai, I've noticed that this facility isn't in the masjid. Is it okay if I donate £5,000? Please don't tell anyone because I want Allah to keep it as a secret. Can you just sort it out? Give me Bishi. ठीक है चलो इनका काम भी हो गया खैर he didn't say anything to me I told him he's my sounding board today mashallah Allah Pak ki bahut khidmat so he does lots of khidmat of deen I actually consider him to be my elder and mashallah Allah Pak continue taking the khidmat of deen from these brothers so and let's just gloss over this point of knowledge because you'll hear the Tablighi Hazrat talking about ilm and zikr connected with each other knowledge and zikr meaning the remembrance of Allah. Now, when it comes to, if you want to call this to be, generally we translate zikr as the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our mind automatically goes towards fada'ilu zikr, you know, reading certain azkar, whether it's the kalima tayyiba, whether it's the first kalima, whether it's Darood Sharif. That's where the mind automatically goes. But the point of zikr, okay, the point of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with so much depth is that so ultimately you are so aware and engrossed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it becomes virtually impossible for you not to act upon the commands of the Sharia. So when we say ilm and zikr, we actually mean ilm and zikr connected to amal. Okay? And Allahu Akbar, when you look at Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, because that's my point, it's mentioned in the biographies of Hazrat Maulana Inamul Hasan Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, who was the third leader of the, if you want to say the head of the Tablighi Jamat or the Tahriq of Iman. Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb's repetition of just Allah's name, Allah, Allah, Allah. And one day, it got to a point where he would say it 60,000 times. Now, if I ask Basharat, buy me an Apple iWatch, I'm pretty sure that if I asked him even, once I'll say to him, you know, he loves me like his wife, once is enough. Khareed lega, yeah? But do you not think if you ask Allah for something 60,000 times, He wouldn't help you? Sochne ki baat hai, yeah? So again, and you know what, again, you can follow, I missed this in my introduction, that the reason why we study the biographies of the elders is because that's what they used to do. They would study the biography of their elders because it reminded them of the people that came before them, all the way up to the tabi'in and the sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. So again, the elders that existed 100, 200, 300 years before include the likes of Hazrat Shah Waliullah rahmatullah alayhi. Again, no scholar in this day and age, especially from the Indian subcontinent, sanad of hadith that gives him some authority, does not go through this individual. Hence, he's known as Musnidul Hind. But he mentioned that in my father's time, and this is one for the appas for the ladies, there was a woman that could say the name of Allah Ta'ala in one breath 1,000 times. Now you're thinking, how is that even possible? Okay, that's where the brain goes. But reality is we haven't seen, and Allah Pak give us all the ability to just look at those special people, and I'll share some stories afterwards, where honestly you get up, they're doing zikr, they're getting down, qiyamum, maq'udum, ma'al-jubim, you just see them constantly, but not in a way which they are separate from you. They listen to you, they talk to you, they eat with you, but their heart is so connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I mentioned before, okay, that this is a tool to help one to practice as much as he can. It's not just words, okay? It's not just words. Well, I remember in school, Bisha, you know, they give you lines. Hazrat Maulana Saheb, lines dete hain maktab mein, you know, likho. I must not do this again. I must not do this again. Give me Farooq bhai. You still give lines out? Is it abuse nowadays to give lines? Why? I mean, the hope was the teacher would think, he'd write that 200 times, he'll never do that thing again. So yeah, if you say Allah's name or you do the kalima X amount of times, it's bound to have, inshallah, some effort. And again, just a quick pitfall with reference to this. Ilm, zikr, amal. Nowadays, mashallah, there's lots of knowledge around. You flick on YouTube, Bayan 1, Bayan 2. You go to libraries, look, mashallah, kitabe. Yeah, but where's the amal? You know, where's the action in people's life vis-a what we have today? Because the elders of the past, they may not have had necessarily Shamila and big libraries and access to manuscripts and books from all over the world and WhatsApp, and you can get something from America in a few seconds. But everything they did have, they would try to act upon it. Why? Because the saying of Imam Malik rahimahullah comes to mind, ki innal ilm, that he says that knowledge, laysa bi kathrati riwayah. Knowledge isn't me saying, mashallah, this is what it says in the Quran, and this is how many hadiths, and be able to recite them, okay? Why? Because innamal ilm nurun yaqdhifu Allahu fil qalb. That ilm is a nur, it's a special nur, it's a special light Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thrusts into the hearts of individuals, okay? Why? Because this is what allows us to enact upon it. And again, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayhi, you may have heard this many times before. At night time on one occasion, or perhaps more than one occasion, they heard a noise in the masjid at 2 to 3 in the morning. So they went up and they found Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas walking around. Hazrat, is everything okay? And he goes, you know what? Everything's okay. I'm just practicing what I think, or I hope, the way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would walk. كان صلى الله عليه وسلم يتكفأ تكفؤا كأنه. The hadith mention how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a certain swiftness, and they describe it as descending from a high place. Maybe a discussion for another day. But he was actually, after reading those hadith, trying to physically enact. Okay? Anyway, so just to move on quickly, again, alhamdulillah, time's okay. Let's finish this point of zikr, okay? Just a very, very small point. Azkar, they're general azkar that all of us can do, okay? When you sit in the ta'aleem, inshallah, fadailu dhikr, every day, mashallah, our Hazrat, Sajid Bhai, mashallah, he'll tell you exactly when those majalis take place. But, there is an aspect, okay, about spiritualism, which we sometimes refer to as tazkiyah, ihsan, and tasawwuf. Okay? It's a very misunderstood again, but it's an essential science, okay? It's very simple to understand, mentioned all over the Quran, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى, but we sometimes don't give it enough importance. For example, if we want to do hafiz of the Quran, we have to enroll in a hifz class, maar khani padti hai, jo bhi hai, slug it out over many years. If we want to become a scholar or want to work in even any degree program, we're willing to accept the rules of that regime because it gets us to somewhere. But when it comes to becoming a complete human being, okay, it's very important to sit in the company of mashayikh and ask them for advice on things like reading certain matters or azkar and which type of zikrs to do. And even Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayhi, well documented that he would have spiritual mentors. He would have people that you could actually go up and open your heart to them and say, Hazrat, today I was in the masjid and somebody came into the office and I shouted at them and I feel guilty and I don't know why this happened, help me. Okay? Or Hazrat, I backbited about someone today and I'm worried, get this out of me. MashaAllah, but you see lots of tabligh. I have lots, friends in tabligh and a couple of them out. Talking about people that are 80 plus years old. One brother came to me, and I kid you not, this guy, when you see him, you think he's a waliullah. He is a waliullah. But he said to me, Mauli Sahib, I've got this problem for the last 20 odd years or whatever. He goes, I've acted upon everything to get kina. I've got hatred in my heart for somebody. I've got something in my heart, I just can't get it out. I've given sadaqah in his name, I've given him salam, but every time I've seen him, my heart's not in the right place. Now, have we ever looked at introspect to this level? Because these are what the mashayikh are for. Hazrat Maulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayhi, his spiritual mentor was Hazrat Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi rahmatullah alayhi. When he passed away, it was Hazrat Maulana Khalil Ahmad Saharanpuri rahmatullah alayhi. Why? Because Hazrat Maulana Ilyas mentions himself that even when I was with the best of people in Tabligh, we'd go out, we'd walk the streets, alhamdulillah, many people would benefit, and I had really good people around me. Achhe log, Hamad Sadiq, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb, Maulana Atiq Saheb, mashallah, Hafiz Munir Saheb, and I have good people around me, but when I came back, I just didn't feel right inside. Maybe he thought it was the compliments he got, maybe it was that sense of achievement. So he said, to wash this from my heart, I'd go to the spiritual centers in Saharanpur, and Raipur. So everybody is in need of this. Next point, which we probably should have mentioned at the beginning, is one of the 6 qualities is just the essence of Iman, but Iman in a way that we can understand it properly. As I mentioned right at the beginning, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb would express some, discomfort at this term Tablighi Jamat, because bhai hamari to tahreek Iman ki hai. We're a movement just to reinvigorate this Iman. What did he mean? Okay? What he meant, and again connecting to the knowledge that we've just discussed, Sahaba are the best of creation after the Anbiya alayhi mussalatu wassalam. Was every Sahaba equal in knowledge? No. There were some Sahaba that only knew one ayat of the Quran. There were some Sahaba that perhaps only knew a few ayats of the Quran, but their Iman was so strong that they would conquer countries just with that. They would go through heaven, they would go through hell on earth and get to their objective. And today we still remember them, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So what is this point? What is this movement of Imam? Okay? Again, look at the life of Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi. There's an anecdote mentioned by Hazrat Maulana Manzoor Nomani Saheb rahmatullah alayhi that once towards the end of a scholar's life, this is a scholar, big scholar he mentions, he's the principal of a big madrasa. He comes to meet Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, and he says, I've just finally, I'm worried because I stayed away from Tabligh for a long time because I for whatever reason, maybe he didn't understand it or he was yet to understand it, and now I finally understood the value of this effort, but I'm old, I don't have much time, my health is not the same, all the excuses we give when it comes to coming to the masjid. So Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb looked at him and he goes, are you telling me that if you had the best of health, you had plenty of resources, plenty of time off work, etc., that you feel that you will then be worthy of doing this work of Tabligh? Because if you think like that, you're not worthy of doing the work of Tabligh. If you're telling me, however, that you feel that you cannot see the end of the light, you can't rely on your health, you can't rely on your time, you can't rely on your wealth. The only thing that you think that's going to make you do the work of Tabligh is Allah, you're now worthy of doing the work of Tabligh. Because we all have those situations in life where we are screwed from every angle. Okay? And reality is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates these situations in us because He wants us to turn to Allah. He wants us to build that Iman and Yaqeen that nothing I do, nothing I have will allow me to get to where I need to get to without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, quoting Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb's father, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah, his father was Maulana Ismail Saheb. This connection, Hazrat will know with Mewat, the area of Mewat. It wasn't Maulana Ilyas, it was actually established in the time of his father. Anyway, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb's watch broke one day. Okay, Bishi, what you wearing? Quartz? No? Just a cheap one. Buzurg aadmi hai. Who's got the Rolex? So unki ghadi toot gayi one day. So somebody said to him that why don't you go to the watchmaker to get it fixed? And he actually got upset at him. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with going to the watchmaker to get it fixed, but look at the thinking, look at the Tarbiyyat, look at the father, Maulana Ilyas Saheb. He goes, I will keep reciting Surah Fatiha on this watch until it starts working. And wallah, his tawakkul and yaqeen Allah was such that it started working. Sochne ki baat hai, yeah? And there's actually, anytime we have a situation, we want our bayan we want our presentation to be successful. We want doors open day in Central Masjid to be successful. We want Nurul Ilm Dars. We want our maktab. When's the last time? Or we want a job interview, we want to get into somewhere, we want to open a new business. Have we actually stopped and read through Nafal and asked Allah before we even began? Because that's the first place you go to. What's coming to you will come to you, rizq will come to you, okay? This is all written. But anyway, that point of Iman, okay? And the Sahaba, as I mentioned at the beginning, their tawakkul was such a level. You probably think that story is a bit funny about the watch, but then why is it the likes of Sa'd ibn Waqas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and the army of thousands, as mentioned, had the ability to walk on water where required? Hayatus Sahaba padho. Hazrat, read it. MashaAllah. So moving on swiftly, alhamdulillah, that's more than half covered. Jazakumullah for your patience. We've only a few points left now. After Iman, as we know, the most important arkan, rukn, the second pillar of Islam as we teach the children, Salah. So Salah, as we know, translates as prayer. Okay? And without going into, again, Fada'ilus Salah, it's mentioned in the books. The Satis here do ta'aleem of it. You can learn more there. Mentioned in the Quran over 60 times. That's just directly. You know, God knows how many times indirectly. How important is Salah is for you and me, and how important the fikr of Salah is for you, me and you. Ab sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even in the pangs of death, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he is leaving this world. He's falling into consciousness. He's coming back into consciousness. But the first thing on his lips, as recorded in the books of Hadith, when he wakes up, when he's given this consciousness, is Salah. Have we paid our Salah? His one of his leaving this world, but still so concerned about the Salah of this ummah. So again, because we are going to mention Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayh, his father Maulana Ismail Saheb. And again, let me just put his father into perspective with a reference to the Queen, just because it's a bit topical. Bishi, what's the longest queue for the Queen right now? कितने घंटे?
24 hours event.
Did you go up to 24 hours? Oh, yeah. Last time I checked it. Chalo subhanallah. And that's with controls and single file and British. There's actually a book called Understanding the English. Very interesting. You know, somebody who watched the English. So, you know, they queue up. This is like a British thing. Yeah, to join queues. You go to Pakistan, you understand why it's, you know. And she mentions, the author mentions that the one time the British will break this principle of queuing up is where? In the pub. There's nobody forms a queue in the pub. I haven't been, you know, people have told me. So, when Maulana Ilyas Saheb's father passed away, Maulana Ilyas Saheb, his father, Maulana Ismail Saheb, passed away, okay? You know, in the olden days, Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb jante, funerals were very simple. Not the estimated 10 million pounds that's going to be spent tomorrow and the 4.3 million pounds of policing, okay? Few hundred rupees. So they'd have a stretcher, and if they thought that this is, lots of people will come to the janaza, you know the handles of the stretcher that you put on your shoulders, they'd make them long. That's what they do. And there was no royal hearse, okay? But this is where you realize reality, who are the kings, okay? Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb's father's janaza started off and went to between Janjana and Delhi. I can't remember exact locations, but the route was for miles. And the books have mentioned there were so many people at the janazah, not queues, from every angle, and there was people that couldn't even touch the janazah. There was that many people to carry that person with their own hands all the way to the qabristan. Such level of qabuliyah, okay? So again, I mentioned this just to put the perspective of Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayh, before just the father of, Hazrat Maulana Ismail Saheb, the father. So when it comes to Salah, okay, he leaves from Ghayath, he comes to Ghayathpura after leaving his hometown of Janjana. It's a village, you don't need to do with the names, okay? And he's there, he's in his masjid, but there's nobody coming for namaz, nobody coming from Salah. So what does he do? He doesn't do what you and me do, go back home, quickly pray namaz, okay? Such was this zeal for Jamaat namaz and Jamaat namaz and the fikr, that he went out, he went to the crossroads, okay, and he waited. He waited till Muslims passed just to say, you know what, will you come and pray namaz with me? This was the zeal, okay? And this zeal of and this is how the relationship with a lot of Mewatis existed. When he noticed that people were coming from Mewat, they were looking for, and you talk about ikhlas, they were actually on the way looking for jobs. And Hazrat Ji Maulana Ismail Saheb, the father of Maulana Ilyas Saheb, he said to them that how much will you earn? They said, we're going to earn, for argument's sake, £1 a day. He said, if I give you £1 a day, will you do exactly what I need you to do? And they said, of course, you're saving us half the journey. And all he did was, he taught them Quran, he taught them wuzu, he taught them salah. And then he would still pay them the money at the end of the day. You know, when you talk about ikhlas, okay, look how it got into his son, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb Bani Tariq Rahmatullah Alayh. When he took over as elder brother as Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Saheb and his father's madrasa, he was so fikr. He said, you know, hunger strikes. He goes, I'm not eating until the kids enroll in this madrasa. Kuch nahi chahiye. I don't want money. I don't want, again, we need to spend money and dini, please don't misunderstand me. We need to spend well on our ulama and our hufaz. But I'm just trying to explain for these people that nothing mattered. They were only concerned about trying to get Quran, Hadith into individuals. He wouldn't even eat. He said, I don't even want your food. Just get these kids in so I can start teaching them. And Maulana Ilyas Saheb Rahmatullah himself, you know, nowadays we talk about jihad, and jihad, this stigmatized word. He had his own jihad. What was his jihad? He got upset one day as a student and he said to his colleague Maulana Riyadul Islam, he got stuck. He goes, you know what? Let's go and do jihad against the people that are reading namaz. Okay? And let's go. He got upset. You know what? Let's go and try and reinvigorate them to come into the masjid, to come and start reading namaz. And look at how we are. And again, I mentioned this in Atlanta. I'm the same, Basharat Bhai, I'm the same. Maybe you'll agree. When we put kids to sleep, what do we tell them? Jab bachcho ko sulana hota hai, what do we say to them? Go to sleep quick because you have what in the morning? School. Sahi baat hai. That's what we say. Naturally, so jao, school utna hai. What comes before school? Now you tell me, psychologically, as a 4 or 5-year-old, tell 16-year-old for 10 years, this person is hearing every single day, go to sleep quick. Why? Because you have school. He's going to think, have fikr of what? The dunya, because he understands school is important, education is important, which it is for my degrees. But do you think he's going to develop a fikr for the akhirat? Whereas if you say, you know what, beta, go to sleep because you have fajr to pray and then you have school, and you remind that person for 10 years, he's going to develop a fikr for the akhirat before he develops a fikr for the dunya. Okay? Salah ki baat aayi na? Final, last quick couple of points, inshallah, and we'll tie this up. I was hoping to finish before 9 o'clock. Inshallah, that's still possible. Ikram. Ab dekhiye, ye Basharat bhai, mashallah, Folwick lekar aaye hain hamare liye. Bismillahi wa ala barakatillah. This is Ikram, okay, on a very basic level. Allah Pak give him jazai khair. What is Ikram? We translate Ikram. See, sometimes we use the word hospitality. We just think it's just about, you know, pizza, sabse khalana, and that's part of it, you know, to feed people, of course. Khana khilao, khana pilao. But Ikram isn't just about feeding people, it's generally just about honoring people, okay? Making the person feel valued and special, okay? This is why, again, quoting for the books of Fazail, nothing new. Satis are used to it. The Sahaba Ikram, they're passing away. But one doesn't want to drink water before the other person wants water. And they go around in a circle and find that one's passed away, the next passed away. Nobody has the water because they're worried about their neighbor having the water first. Or Pani mein, here's an amazing kissa, okay? Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb's father, Maulana Ismail Saheb, he would go out his way in the baking heat of India. And he would take water, like Basharat Bhai is giving me water today. And whoever it was, Muslim, non-Muslim, Hindu, British, non-British, he would feed them water. But when we do Ikram, what happens to the heart? We feel good. You know, well, he comes and Jazakallah, you gave me water, might you give us some money, next time we'll remember you, okay? But this is the difference between the qualities that the elders of Tabligh had and us. Hazrat Maulana Ismail Saheb, after doing such an act, feeding all these people water, stand on the musalla and you pray 2 rakat namaz, and you know what he'd say to Allah? Say, Ya Allah, I want to thank you for the honor you've given me of serving these people. And he's thinking by serving somebody, because we think we're doing them a favor, but the mashayikh think that they're doing themselves a favor. ये जो है ना, इसको बोलते हैं Ikram in the hakiki mana, okay? And Maulana Ilyas Saheb, again, I don't have time today, the books mention that he's very particular about dealings. He goes, your aajkal iski badi zarurat hai, we've been hearing this, alhamdulillah, your Iman, and then afterwards your Salah, your Saum, your fasting, your Hajj, everything to one side. But if you're going to live a life, okay, of disturbing people, annoying people, doing people out of money, then you're basically going to lose plenty of your good deeds. Very, very important. So if we cannot honor people in the way that they should be honored, okay, then the least we can do is not to disturb people. And again, I'm putting into perspective because all these qualities are necessary. Okay, and we're going to finish off with Dawat. But Hazrat Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi, rahmatullah alayhi, again, one of the elders that Maulana Ilyas Saheb, rahmatullah alayhi, very similar time. We can discuss that afterwards about the amount of respect and love they had between themselves. But he writes, he says, I'm that type of spiritual mentor where your zikr, azkar, and these things I've told, read your X amount of surahs, these are important, and I will get happy when you do them, but the most important thing to me, okay, remember this, the most important thing is that never hurt anybody with your tongue or your pen, okay? Because reality is you will have, mashallah, lots of ibadat, but the way you are, your social interaction, okay, one visit is enough to put somebody off the work of tabligh or any work, or even your own family member for the rest of your life. And this is again advice from me before we move on to the final point, which is what maybe Hazrat thought about Dawat, okay? The sixth characteristic, the sixth quality is this quality of giving dawah, okay? And again, wo to Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, Hazrat Sheikh rahmatullah alayhi, Maulana Zakaria, the author of Fazail Amal and many other kitabs, he mentions this in Akabir ki Ramadan, that reality was Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, he was head to toe dawah, okay? I'm paraphrasing. And the ayat I recited before you right at the beginning, Udu ila sabili rabbik bil hikmati wal ma'udatil hasana, that call to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with wisdom and with wise and good counsel, okay? This is Surah An-Nahl. Okay, in some degree, it's a responsibility not just on Basharat and Maulana Ilyas Saheb, but it's a responsibility of myself and everybody here and everybody out there. Tabligh is just not for Tablighis. Tabligh is for everyone. And the responsibility on this ummah, again, just so that we understand the value, okay, the value of da'wat and the power it has. Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, before the work of Tabligh and the form we understand it started, he's established madaris, small or big or whatever areas where people would come, they'd study Quran and Hadith. Now the books mention in 3 years, guess how many madrasas, small madrasas he managed to open? 260. 260 makatib. So in those few years, when the first Hafiz graduated, they had a jalsa like we do. So Hazrat Ji Maulana Ilyas Saheb rahmatullah alayhi, he went to this jalsa and he notices that this Hafiz, mashallah, is a Hafiz of the Quran, but how is he talking? Big mustache, no beard, no topi, no regard for the sunnah, his actions, no regard for salah. And he got really, really upset. He goes that I've done all this work for 3 years and this is the outcome that's happened, okay? And then fast forward, when the work of Tabligh started through inspiration, the Satis will tell you the story of how Hazrat was so upset that he went to the Hijaz, he actually left the country. And then he had inspiration from Ab sallallahu alayhi wasallam that this work of Tabligh would be taken from him, and he came back. Then when this model of Tablighi Jamat came, he noticed when he went on the first Jamaat for 3 days, just 3 days, not 3 years of 260 madrasas. Suddenly, mashallah, somebody comes back and, the way he talks has changed. He's praying his namaz. He's crying because of his sins. Muh par daadi aa gayi hai, sunnat, 3 days. So you think of what I wasn't able to achieve in 3 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now taking for me in 3 days. And give it a chance. I'm going to finish on this point, so I'll leave it. But reality is that there is lots of benefits for us, okay? I just left a colleague of mine, he says, Asmar, my daughter, a good friend of mine, mashallah, is a specialist in ilm hadith, good friend of mine. He said, my own sister, we tried everything with her. She went to a really good madrasa. She, very famous, again, without mentioning the name. She's from a very pious background, but nothing was working on this, okay? She had no fikr of Ikram or respect for parents or these sort of things, okay? But I took her on Jamat for 3 days. I didn't expect her to go. And she came back. And when I came home, my father had a big smile on his face. Maga, Abu, what's happened? He goes, Beta, something strange happened today. He goes, what? He goes, when I was leaving for work, your sister that we've been having all these problems with, she had put a flask there with hot tea for me to take to work with me without me even telling her. I'm telling this to you because, see, if you were that father, you would understand how happy he was. Again, through the barakat of Tabligh. And then, just a little point, okay? Alhamdulillah, I still have 4 minutes. The ayat says, وَمَوْئِذَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ, and before that it mentions hikmah. This is where the likes of me mess up. Very easy sometimes to do Amr bil Ma'roof, do this Zikr, you get this inshallah. See, when it comes Nahi anil Munkar, when you're telling somebody off, that's where you really need wisdom. This is why you spend time in Tabligh, they talk about these things, they discuss, the books mention, how do you give da'wah to an alim? How do you give da'wah to the Zakireen? These are all usul, so that when you approach somebody, that you don't give da'wah in the wrong way, okay? And as individuals, and I'll be very honest with you, I'm maybe talking about myself, and a lot of our institutions, our masajid and people that do various organizations, and even not even them, just as human beings, every one of us, most of us, or a lot of us, illa mashallah, there are some great good people which I'll mention in a second, we become so defensive that the minute somebody tries to tell us that, bhai, you did that wrong, without even the person finishing the sentence, our brain is thinking, main iska jawab kis tarah do, how am I gonna tell that? Straight away, doors, shutters come down. So I don't like talking about myself because I've got no achievements and anything I've done is just wasted. Kharab ho gaya. I left Glasgow for 6 years and I feel as though I've not earned anything. But just one small anecdote, if I have permission of my asatiza and the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the honor of serving and seeing, okay? And I was hoping that my colleagues would be here. We had the honor of studying ifta, the ta'aleem of giving fatwa with many mashayikh, and one of them was Mufti Ikram al-Haq Saheb, still alive, hafidahullah, in Blackburn, okay? So one day I was walking with Ustad Ji outside the madrasa, and I asked him a question that they're completely ambiguous third-party question, okay? Okay, Hazrat, there's a problem and I need your advice. He goes, what? He goes, that there is a teacher who teaches books of hadith, Shaykh al-Hadith, big teacher. But every time not every time, but a lot of the time when he gives and takes, he doesn't use his right hand. He doesn't fulfill the sunnah of giving and taking with right hand. Now normally for somebody like me, it's not a problem. Who are we and the elders? But it's got to such a point that this is being thought about amongst the students. So how do we protect, at the end of the day, how am I supposed to approach such a big alim, okay, over something so simple? Because everybody's in need. So then Hazrat, he advised me, he said, Asmar, what you've said is right. It's good you're thinking about this. Look, with hikmat, with wisdom, maybe in private, if you just mention, okay? And this wasn't a one-off. This was something that happened quite regularly. So discussion finished. Now, as far as he's concerned, I could be speaking about some other sheikh and some other madrasa in Panama, okay? No relation to the place that we were or the way we were speaking. But Hazrat, and Hazrat Mufti Ikram, he's the Sadr Mufti. He's somebody who spent his whole life, okay, in the service of Deen. Jami Hussaini around there. Hazrat, you can ask Hazrat Maulana Ilyas about these places, 9 years. Darulum Deoband doing iftar for 2-3 years. Then the khidmat of Hazrat Mufti Abdul Rahim Lajpuri Rahmatullah Alayhi for 22 years. This guy is an authority. You go to Darulum Blackburn, he's the Sadr Mufti. His say is final, okay? So when he heard this, I thought, Hazrat, this is good advice. I just started speaking to somebody else. 5 minutes later, the same person, Ustad Ji, he comes running back in with a look of worry on his face. I didn't expect him to come back in because generally when he leaves, somebody else drops him off home or he doesn't come back in. He goes, he says to me, he goes, "Wo jo aapne sawal pucha hai, what you've asked about this teacher giving take with the right hand. The reason why I came back to the madrasa is because I was worried you were talking about me. Is it me you're talking about?" Meri to zameen hi nikal gayi yaar. I think, look at this person. Like, I'm not even talking about him. I've given him no clues, but he's that worried that he's losing out of a sunnah to somebody who's not even, I'm calling me a mouse in front of him is actually a disrespect to Ustad Ji. Even if I refer to myself as a mouse in front of lions like these people, but he's so worried. Ajib, this fikr of trying to improve as individuals. So my time is now up, 9 o'clock. Let's just finish with the concluding points. The mission of the Tablighi Jamat, I use that term loosely, this movement of Iman, is no different to the missions of the Prophet. They keep mentioning this is the work of the Anbiya alayhimu salatu wassalam. It's for you to benefit from and me. Okay? It's not a sectarian group, as I mentioned. Its purpose is grassroots, simply to put this yaqeen, this power of the Iman, to make sure that the word of Allah and His Rasul gets to every high point, to every low point, to every rich person, to every poor person, to every learned person and every jahil person like me. Okay, that is the purpose of Tablighi, of the work of Tabligh. And being honest with you, in this 1 hour, I don't think I've even touched the iceberg, okay? There are books, and I've just mentioned a few anecdotes. There are books upon books written about not only the founder, Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Saheb, but many other akabir of Tabligh, Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Saheb, Hazrat Maulana Imam Hassan Saheb, Hazrat Maulana Ubaidullah Saheb, Maulana Umar Palampuri Saheb. You could go on and on and on, okay? And they're amazing personalities, but the purpose, as I said, is not just to discuss. The purpose is knowledge and amal. The hadith that I mentioned, and we'll finish inshallah on this, again mentioned in the books, quoted by Imam Muslim rahmatullah alayhi, that you and me, the ummah, we're like traveling on a ship. And the Prophet ﷺ uses example that if the people on the top deck, first class, whatever, and then ignore the people on the bottom deck, economy, and the people on the bottom deck, they think, we need some water, let's make a hole in the bottom of the ship. What do you think will happen to everybody on that ship? Everybody will go. The Ummah's problems are not the Tablighi Jamat's problems. The Ummah's problems are not the Ulama's problems. The Ummah's problems are not the problems of Masjid Ibrahim. The Ummah's problems are your problems and my problems. Okay? And honestly, the work of Tablighi Jamat, I've been to places where, it really hits you where you don't see when there was amazing work, lots of barakah, but it's no longer there. There are other ways of guiding the youth. I'm not saying that, and again, there's something I should have mentioned, to be honest, that Hazrat Sheikh Rahmatullah mentioned, I'm glad that, if you start thinking that Tabligh is the only way, or it's somehow better than other ways, Hazrat Sheikh Rahmatullah mentions, not just for Tabligh, but for any, if you're a mudarris or you're running a khanqa, the day you start thinking that something else is insignificant or you're more significant, from that day on you are, that's when you'll start falling. Okay? As Maulana Sayyid Ahmad Khan Sahib, he goes that all the parts of deen, whether it's Tablighi people, whether it's the ulama, whether it's the khanqa people, or perhaps other areas, they're like jawarih, they're like body parts, okay? In order to walk, you need your hands, you need your feet, okay? You need your shoulders, you need your head. Everything plays a role. And you know what? Sometimes every role needs to be checked. And I mentioned some of these points. So as I mentioned with the hadith of Imam Muslim, okay? What can we take away? First and foremost, by just try and sit in the ta'aleem. Just, even if you don't understand, well, inshallah you understand it because they do it in English and Urdu, but sit with this niyat ki, Ya Allah, I don't want to do this, but make this a means of my guidance, make this a means of barakah in my life. Just give it a chance, okay? 5-minute ta'aleem, if you can't come every day, try and come every second day. Start with the basics, okay? Kyun bhi Farooq bhai? And then inshallah, if Allah Pak gives you tawfiq, as I mentioned, I'm a half-baked tablighi, maybe Allah Pak gives me tawfiq, then you can liaise with Sajid Bhai to say, look, what's the next step? What's the next step, okay? I've got a few days, maybe we can travel to meet people that Mauli Saheb and Masjid Ibrahim was talking about. And mashallah, Dr. Saheb sitting here to my right, these people, Hafiz Munir Saheb, they have seen people like this, that have these qualities, okay? You ask them, stop talking about all the other rubbish we're talking about. Just ask them, say, that Maulana Saheb was talking about special people. Tell me about special people. Where can I find them? Okay, where can I spend a few hours with them? Okay, and finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's Rahim and Kareem. Okay, I wanted to, mention a thing on Panama, but our Hazrat would always respect the time of people. I don't think that if you want to speak to me afterwards, remind me. I just want to finish there because I've gone slightly over time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I mentioned at the beginning, accept whatever little we've mentioned. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the ikhlas of our elders, give them jazai khair for everything they've done for us. May Allah ta'ala enable us to understand our legacy as Muslims. Okay, understand our legacy. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Hazrat Ilyas साहब, आपका नाम भी इलियास है और मौजू भी इलियास, आपको दुआ फरमानी होगी इंशाल्लाह.